Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Fandom Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z. Martin, and tonight we're talking about headcanon, which is all the things that you, and fanon, all those things that you believe, but they didn't actually happen on the show. And maybe they're just the filler that you came up with, or the way your brain thinks things went, or maybe you've read fan fiction about them or had a good conversation and that just kind of locked in to say, I bet that explains it. So that's what we're going to get into tonight. But first, let's let everybody introduce themselves, starting with Anne.
Hi, I'm Ann Wicker, and I'm a former journalist and now writer and editor. And I edited a book called Making Notes, Music of the Carolinas a few years ago. And it's an anthology. It's a lot of fun about music in North and South Carolina. Then I also helped Ann Moses of Tiger Beat magazine fame write and edit her memoir about her time at Tiger Beat in the late 60s and early 70s, when she hung around with the Monkees and Bobby Sherman and David Cassidy and all that. And she even met Elvis several times. So anyway, so that's me. And I'm a unabashed Dean girl.
I swear I kept Tiger Beat in business, and, when I was in middle school and high school.
Absolutely. It was a dream come true to work with her.
Those posters, you could pull them out of the mail, put them on your wall. Great. Carol?
Hi, I'm Carole Stokes. I'm a longtime fan since season 3. Started writing fanfic in 2012. You can find all my stories on AO3 under Firesign10, and I'm on Twitter under true_Firesign10, and often on the Gail's website.
Melissa?
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm a fan since season 1. You can find me in Gail's Supernatural group or stalking certain writers on AO3, but we won't mention any of their names. Firesign10.
How about you, Lola?
Fan since season 1, but that's just because I watched everything on CW, so it's not like I was, prophetic or anything. I always watch the CW. So dogs are starting to bark, so I'll try to hurry it up. I'm a writer. You can find me on Facebook under Lola Strickland and Lola Strickland, because pin names, and Twitter at Lola Strickland. That's all.
And I'm Gail Z. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, near future, post-apocalyptic stuff, and more. And as Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal, romance. But all of the modern worlds are ones Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home. I'm a fan since season 11, binge watched 11 seasons in 4 months for the start of season 12, as one does, and went down the rabbit hole and haven't hit bottom yet. So, and I do run the Supernatural TFWNC group, when I'm not running the Supernatural Fandom Track here at Continual. So, some of the headcanon things have a bigger footprint in fanon than other things. Let's start with a big one, which is the voicemail, which never, I was holding on. I was waiting for the end of the series thinking, has Sam gone, 10 years now, still thinking that was real? What do you guys think ever happened about the voicemail? Did they push it down and bury it, or was there a conversation at some point? Carol?
Wasn't ready for that one. In true Winchester tradition, they probably just pushed it down and buried it. I would like to think that at some point it was brought up and hashed out. And I've seen it happen both ways in fic. There have been fics that dealt with that, and many that just kind of mentioned it and then moved on. So that's a real 50-50 split on how that could have gone. So I can't call that. It really could have gone either way. And yeah, that's really all I got on that.
Melissa?
They had a conversation off screen because I can't imagine that never bubbled up from the surface from Sam. So I believe that they had to have had a conversation about it off screen. It was probably very unpleasant and awful, but they had the conversation, and eventually Dean was able to convince Sam that that was all a lie. He never said that stuff. It was all our least favorite angel playing tricks.
Lola?
I agree. I think because they do eventually get everything out. I mean, they may bury it deep, but eventually it bubbles up. They can't keep everything in forever. But I think eventually, like, it was used as a weapon. Like, you left that voicemail, and Dean was like, "What are you talking about?" So I think it came back with lots of drama.
Okay, Anne?
Yeah, it would have to be lots of drama. I agree with Lola that somewhere along the line it surfaced for Sam in some context off screen, as Melissa says, and Dean was able to convince him that it really was Zach. And so I think that that's probably what happened. I like to think that anyway, and that they didn't just pull a Winchester and bury it and salt and burn it.
Even when you bury a Winchester, they don't stay dead, so that doesn't really work.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my mind, I think it either came up in the middle of a fight or after a lot of alcohol. And probably Sam says something about it in passing, like you would about any other fact, like, yeah, except you said you were going to kill me. And then they hash it out. I can't see it not ever coming up. And at the end of the series, the boys really are very much on the same page. And I think you'd have to get some of those old things out to be that good with each other. So yeah, that's my idea, is that they were either hella drunk and talked about it, or it came up in the middle of a fight. So we did get sort of some closure in canon on this next piece, but there's a lot that we don't know, which is the Samulet. That Dean's necklace that he dropped in the trash can and then shows back up again as a way, with God, with Chuck. What do you think? Where was it? Did Sam pick it up? How do you think that worked? Anne?
I'm positive that Sam picked it up and he kept it buried in his duffel until it was needed, or buried in his little memory box that we've seen at the bunker that has. Didn't he have the other amulet that he got from fan fiction in there too? So, that would be a logical place for him to keep it. But his duffel would also be a logical place, I think. But yeah, I'm positive that Sam picked it up and kept it. He couldn't let that go, as much as it hurt him to watch Dean throw it away.
Yeah. Lola?
I am going to defer to everyone else because that's actually not something I've thought about.
Okay. Melissa?
Dean got as far out the door as it almost closing, spun around to come back into the room just as Sam was reaching in the trash can, and the two of them tussled over it, and Sam was like, "Nope, you can't have this back. Not right now," and put it in the box with the other memories. I can't see a world where Dean was so angry that he could really let that go. So to me, it had to happen like right then. I just can't see him leaving it. Doesn't work for me.
Mm-hmm. I think that whether he went back for it right away or whether he cooled down, drove back, Sam was gone, the room was cleared out, and the garbage can was emptied. It's very Dean to go back for it, blow up, and then repent. only this time it was, a little too late. We know for real that Jensen didn't want to wear it anymore because it kept hitting him in the face if he forgot to take it off on stunts and he chipped it too. I can't begrudge him that. He kept forgetting to put the rubber one on that didn't hurt as much, which is why it never came back.
I'm totally in the Sam picked it up camp.
Yeah, I
left, and Sam was just like, while he was still heartbroken, he just was like, I'm taking it and I'm keeping it,
Yeah.
if only as a memory, if not because at some point, someday, Dean might want it back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Now, what about Ben? Really Dean's kid or not? Carol?
It's tempting, but I'm going to say no. Lisa really has nothing to gain by lying to Dean about this. Yes, she knows that he lives in a dangerous world at that point, and this is already well before he has the whole vamp thing and pushes Ben around accidentally, but she just has nothing to gain there, and I can't see her denying Ben the chance to know his father if Dean were to be his father, and letting him lose that opportunity, and instead, and I believed her when she's like, well, I had a type, that's not a stretch for people, when they're like, I have a type. So no, I think Ben is a child of his soul, perhaps, but not a child of his loins.
Okay. And
I have to.
Sorry, my brain went off there with the loins comment. Anne, you were saying?
Yeah, that was a little distracting there, Carol.
Ooh.
I
aim to please.
I come down kind of on the other side of that I think that it was almost, to me, when she told Dean that Ben that the father was this barback, that it was almost too quick and too pat, that she had that story ready, and at that point she never thought that Dean was going to show back up, later and live with them. And by that time it was too late for her to take that back. And I do believe that even if he wasn't Dean's child, he was so much like Dean in personality that it was amazing. And also the fact that she told her girlfriends it was the best weekend of her life, and Ben was probably the best thing that ever happened to her from the best weekend of her life. So that's what I like to think about it. Because I didn't mind that relationship at all. I liked Lisa a lot better than Cassie. So
okay. Melissa?
The writers laid it on too thick. I mean, they didn't just give us hints that Ben might be Dean's. They spread that story so thick with the whole, he acts just like Mini Dean. That for me alone definitely puts it into the no column. They tried too hard to sell that to me. Also, I kind of agree with Carol. What did Lisa have to gain by either saying, I don't know who his father is, or because she wouldn't really know if it was Dean's unless she wasn't sleeping with anybody else during that time frame. So I don't see what she would gain by lying. What was the point? She didn't think that Dean was a terrible guy, so it's not like she would be afraid of having been around Dean. So I don't buy that Ben was Dean's.
Lola?
I agree. I think the show was yanking our chain, because I remember when that came out, and I remember the commercials and thinking, oh my God, that's like a baby Dean. I'm like, they could totally have that actor be like young Dean if they ever want. I'm like, oh my God. And so the whole time in the show, they're like having the little boy swagger, and he's like, he might as well be smoking. He's like, yo, Sandy, what's up? I'm Danny Zuko. I mean, that's how thick they laid it on. You know, I was like, okay, they're trying too hard to make him like a little bad kid. I'm like, it's going to turn around, because anytime a show does that, they're going to turn it on itself. So I'm like, no, they're going to disappoint us. And lo and behold, I was disappointed. It wasn't his kid. I felt like he'd been ripped away from me. I was like, no, Dean baby, don't take Dean baby away.
I think that from a show perspective, they really couldn't have Dean leave Ben and Lisa if it really was his kid and retain viewer sympathy.
Integrity.
And we didn't have a show if Dean didn't go back on the road with Sam. So I think they kind of had to spin it that way. As far as what Lisa would have to gain, it would be control, because I've known a lot of single mothers who are afraid of having the father show back up and take the kid away from them, or fight for custody. And she didn't really know Dean. She and honestly, after she got to know him even better, she might have doubled down on not wanting a claim on Ben. So I think it certainly could have been, but I think from the showrunner's perspective, they had to tell us it wasn't, so that we'd remain sympathetic. That's my 2 cents anyhow. Any follow up on that, Ann? You look like you're thinking.
Well, I was just thinking that I think that for me, it was just that I wanted there to be a second generation Dean. You know, I didn't want it to, and of course we know there was in the end, but that was Sam's kid. You know, I really wanted Dean to have a kid of his own, because he was so good. All of his experience raising Sam.
Yeah.
He was always so good with children. And I wanted that for him. So maybe that's part of my, you know, even though they, like you said, Melissa, they laid it on thick, I wanted that for him.
Right.
It would have been so devastating for him, though, if it really had been his child, because he would have still had to leave.
Yeah.
You know, in the end, he didn't want to put them at risk.
No.
And that would have been, you know, he regretted it already. I mean, it was already hard for him to leave them. And he was so very, very fond of Ben already. And, you know, if that had been his actual child by blood, that would have been, you know, devastating.
Yeah.
So, I think that also puts a tick in the close but no cigar column.
Yeah.
Well, I know I've talked about this before, and, you know, of course, family is central. Family is tenet to this show. And that's the point a lot of you are making, that, you know, they couldn't have him be blood and then have him abandon him. But I keep coming back to poor dang Adam. Did they even shed one tear over that boy? One tear? He was blood. And I don't think they were just like, oh, he's dead.
I mean, when they lost Adam, you could see that Dean was, you know, emotionally shaken a lot. He really thought, you know, he was helping Sam out. He really thought Adam's right on his heels. And then Zachariah, you know, yanks that door shut, and they were crushed. And they did try to go back, and they couldn't. The door was locked. They tried to grab the knob, and their hands were seared. You know, so he did really take that seriously, that Adam was their brother, but they had no recourse at that point. And, you know, the angels were just too powerful. So even there, they were stymied, and it was very unfortunate. But I think there's no doubt in my mind that Dean and Sam both really felt that loss acutely.
I guess maybe I wish we'd had a few scenes where they're like, remember that brother? You know, just a few, just like one scene, like, didn't we have a brother? No.
Your disposable Winchester, yes.
I know, I just feel so bad for him. I'm like his champion. Poor guy.
Any headcanon about John keeping Adam a secret all those years? I mean, not telling Sam and Dean they had a brother. I can understand not telling Adam about hunting, but any headcanon around that?
Well, you know, if memory serves, John didn't even know about Adam until Adam was like, what, 12 or
Yeah, I think 11
13
and
or
12.
something?
Yeah. Yeah.
So by that time, John was so into his mania of trying to kill the yellow-eyed demon that I think he was trying to, I think he, in his own weird way, he was trying to protect them, just as, in a different sort of thing. If Ben had been Dean's, Dean might have gone through with the same thing just to protect them, and in the end, it didn't work for Adam and his mother either, but it, I think that, I mean, my gut tells me that John just was trying to protect them.
Yeah, and I felt so bad when you saw the pictures of John, like at a baseball game or something, or just really having fun with Adam. I was like, oh, I felt so bad for Dean and Sam in that moment. But maybe he was trying to do, what would be a good analogy. All right, I never had any brothers or sisters, but you hear about, if a parent remarries and they have a second family and they do uber good with the second family, and the first family is like, people, I'm here too. So it's a little bit like that. It's like he tried so hard with Adam to do everything right that he didn't do wrong with Sam and Dean. Still, it would have been nice if he clued them in. It would have been nice, but whatever. Can't rewrite history. Oh wait, we can. That's what we're doing right now.
That's what fanfic's for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I always wondered about with making Lisa and Ben forget about Dean. Okay, it works for Lisa and Ben ever showing up. But what about all those demons out there? What about all the bad guys? What about Crowley? What about the whole rest of the world that kind of knew Dean was with her? I was never exactly sure how that worked, other than they didn't come looking for him. There you go. It's freaking magic. Don't ask. Just don't ask.
That never works. Countless shows they do that. Walker, they did that. I still think about, I know this is off topic, but Liam and booting his boyfriend because he wanted to keep him safe. It doesn't work that way. The bad guys know all about pretty boyfriend. And the boy and Supernatural, the demons know about Lisa and Ben. It's better off if you're around to protect them. But the writers, I just want to sit down with all the writers, all the staff writers in the world and say, stop doing that. It doesn't work.
Out of sight, out of mind, out of danger.
Yeah. It's the old amnesia trope from daytime TV. So we've talked about Lisa and Ben. Now, there is a fan theory that Amelia was really just a hallucination, because the original, the early scenes we see are kind of sepia toned and blurry. And so the fan theory goes, she was really a hallucination, and then the writers changed their mind and made it real. What do you think, Lola?
Well, you blew my mind. I've never heard that. If that's true, then that's a lot of hallucinating. I think maybe somebody needs to see a doctor.
Well, we knew that.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know about that. I don't know. I think it was real. I just wish they hadn't dropped it like they did.
Oh, I'm just as glad they dropped it.
Oh.
I come down on the side of that it was real, and also that I'm glad that they dropped it, because I didn't think there was chemistry between those two at all. And I just thought that they didn't know what to do with Sam without Dean, and Sam didn't know what to do with Sam without Dean.
I figured they had to do a parallel. They love their mirror images. Dean got Lisa, Sam got somebody.
Yeah.
Um,
But at least Lisa and Dean kind of worked. And Lisa and, I mean, Amelia and Sam was just kind of boring.
It did
Yeah.
get shoehorned. It really did, because Amelia was there, and then like, wait, they're together? What? Because you think 15 years and Sam doesn't have anybody, and then all of a sudden he has a girlfriend. I'm like, really? So yeah.
Melissa?
That was a total hallucination. That was coping skills. Sam always wanted a dog. Sam found a dog. Sam invented this whole other story around the dog. Yeah, no. Amelia was an absolutely figment of his imagination. It was his coping skills. And Sam had more chemistry with that dog, whose name I can't even remember,
Riot.
than he ever had with Amelia. Like,
This is true.
no. I am 100% team. Amelia was all made up.
Would you like my opinion on that, Gail?
Yes.
Sadly, Amelia was real. I know, I'm so sorry. But I totally agree. There was no chemistry there whatsoever. In fact, I found myself in at least 3 episodes going, why is he with a woman who talks to him that way? I
And
would be
shamed
with
him
a
into taking
man.
dog.
I would not be with a man who talked to me that way. Why was he with this woman? Did he feel like he deserved to be punished? You know, you didn't look for Dean, so you're going to be with this awful woman who doesn't speak well to you. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
So here's
I
a
don't know who was
follow-up question.
self-flagellating or something at this point.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of a doctor shames a homeless guy to take a dog?
Yeah. Well, it's your
Okay.
fault. You take the dog.
But if Amelia was real, did Chuck bring Dawn back just to put Sam back on the road with Dean in his favorite show?
I think it was one of those things that just really can happen where they think this person died in this horrible, you know, combat event. And then like, oh, you know what? They didn't. I mean, that stuff happens, you know.
Dan?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff does happen. But it seemed very cliched to me and very like, well, we don't know how to end this relationship, when they could have just ended it with Sam leaving to go back to Dean, or leaving because he was bored out of his mind. but they you know, they brought this whole, they tried to bring an emotional depth to it, which didn't work for me either.
The
Sorry.
whole thing for me boils down to she and Sam have this last interaction in a motel room, and he's there with on his elbow with a sheet and no shirt and everything. I'm like, I'm sorry, there are not a lot of women in their right mind who would leave that. Okay, that's just my opinion. And she didn't. She came back and he was gone. So she didn't even leave him. He left her.
As it should be.
As it
It
should.
goes in.
Melissa?
I hadn't thought about it being Chuck who brought the husband back, but as soon as you said it, that makes perfect sense to me. Because yes, I know that these things happen, but it was too convenient that it happened. Chuck needed to get Sam and Dean back together because that's his favorite show. So he's going to do whatever it takes to bring back his favorite show, including bringing back somebody who was dead. So
Okay.
to me, that made perfect sense as soon as you said it.
Lola?
Well, you know, it could be it could be Chuck, but this kind of leads to something I was thinking about. There's my dogs again. Last week during our rewatch, we were talking about Jesse Turner and about how he just disappeared. But I always think maybe he's secretly behind some of this stuff. So maybe it was him who thought that, you know, Sam needs to be back on the road and back to saving people and doing stuff. So who knows, maybe he was behind it.
Oh, I like that. That's a different one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not sure that just sending people to Australia is a way to get rid of them permanently. You know, there are people who live in Australia. Just because it's far away from here doesn't mean that, you know,
Especially if you're part demon. I mean, you can,
people,
you know, you can be anywhere. And he was very powerful. I mean, he probably would have rivaled Jack, I would think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I feel that's my fan canon. That's actually what I put down. I think Jesse Turner was behind a lot of stuff, but the writers just didn't think to clue us in.
I would have rather had Jesse than Chuck in a lot of cases. Yes. So what do you think Rufus and Bobby fought over?
I have always wondered that. I have
And what
always
did
wondered that.
John do that Bobby threatened to shoot him full of buckshot? While we're talking about surly Bobby. Yeah.
Bobby hit one of the boys in the face. He slapped either Sam or Diem across the face in front of Bobby, and that was it. Bobby was
I
done.
can see that.
Yeah.
I'm with her.
Yeah.
Or grab one of them by the arm roughly, or shove one of them.
Something physical with them. And Bobby was like, nah. I mean, especially once we learned Bobby's whole backstory, and we could understand why that would be such a triggering event for him. But even before then, just because of the way he was so fond of them, you know, and he didn't hold from the get-go, we could see he did not hold with how John was raising them. That would have been like the final straw. He would have been like, step off, you know.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. I'm absolutely sure that's right.
Yeah.
I don't know about Rufus though. That's really interesting. And he was mad to his dying day.
Yeah.
Dying day. He's like, you know, we're okay in that we have worked together and all this time, but we are not okay.
You think
Rufus,
Rufus
is the one who sees Bobby over to the other side. He's his psycho mom, and he's still pissed.
That's some long-lasting pissness.
Yeah.
So what do you have to do?
Somebody had to die. I feel like
Good
somebody
point.
died, you know, for some, I don't know if Bobby made a mistake because he wasn't the experienced Bobby that we all got to know, you know, or there was a misstep or what, but somebody close to Rufus had to die, and Rufus has never gotten over it. But it was a shock to hear him castigate Bobby like that when we had seen them being so jocularly, you know, working together and stuff like that, and joshing each other and stuff. But then when it came down to brass tacks, man, he was not having it.
Yeah.
I bet it must have been something they felt strongly about, because we've all been in that position where there's my friend I've had for 25 years. I love her to death, but we don't, I mean, if it hadn't been Zoom, we would have come to blows, but you can't really hurt anyone over Zoom. So, but I mean, this was a few months ago. I mean, like, it was like blood would have been drawn if we'd been in the same room. And I love this woman to death, 25 years friendship, but something she said and something I said, it just like drew blood from us. And all of a sudden it's like, and it's like, and
well, I'm not sure Bobby and Rufus had all the sound effects, but I think the meaning was the same.
I like
and no
have this
ability to have a discussion about it because we know how that goes. And
I have to agree that it had to be somebody close to Rufus who died because of something that, was it a former partner of Rufus's before Bobby, or was it a woman was it Rufus's wife or sister or somebody who was involved who somebody went after because what we were just talking about, where John was trying to protect Adam, Dean was trying to protect Lisa. Maybe it was somebody that Rufus was trying to protect, and inexperienced Bobby, because I agree, Carole, that it was probably the inexperienced Bobby, and something just blew up in their faces. And they kept working together because there was a certain amount of respect and love there, but it was never the same. And you know, I know that I have friends like that, that, you know, something happened along the way, and you're not quite as close as you used to be, but you still do things together because you have that history,
Mhm.
and there's
But that
nothing.
wound is underneath. It's
Yeah,
stabbed over and scarred over, but underneath that wound is still there.
yeah,
It's like a break, a break in the relationship, and you can never quite mend it. You still keep going, but it's never quite the same.
Mhm, mhm.
right.
Okay. What about Dean Jr.? Did he hunt or not?
Ooh, I thought about that today. Carol, do you want to go ahead?
No,
Or-
no, 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 you go.
I thought about that today, and I like to think that Dean Jr. was more on the Bobby side, as we knew Bobby, where he was a scholar, you know, and that he followed in his dad's footsteps about the lore, and that he didn't maybe go out and hunt, but maybe he did some just to know what it was like to be out there, but that his specialty was hitting the books and knowing the lore, and that, you know, Garth would send people to him for information, and well, to he and his dad for information until Sam got sick. And I mean, that's what I like to think, that Sam was trying to protect him to a certain extent by not putting him out there, but having him know how to take care of himself, and helping young Dean to help other hunters. That's what I like to think. Sort of the, not quite like the men of letters, who there were the men of letters and then there were the hunters, but the just sort of combining both of those in young Dean.
Okay. Carol?
I feel like he wasn't a hunter. I feel like he knew what was out there, and there may have been times where he went out there, if there was something threatening his near and dear, for instance, maybe he would have gone out there and dealt with it. But I don't think he put himself out there like Sam and Dean did at all. And I don't think Sam wanted him to. I think Sam wanted him to have the life that Sam had wanted way back when, and then realized he could never have. So he wanted his son to have that life, and know what it was like to have a family and all of that kind of stuff. But he did not leave his son unaware. So Dean Jr. knew it was out there. He had the tattoo. He knew how to deal with stuff, but it was not his primary life. It was kind of like an as needed thing. But otherwise he went on. So he was like aware, occasionally involved, but not on a full-time basis like the other, like his namesake, for instance.
Melissa?
Sam taught Dean Jr. in very broad strokes that there were evil things out there, because he would have had to explain the anti-possession tattoo. But he didn't give many details. He kept it really broad, really general, and would refuse to talk about it in any depth or teach Dean Jr. anything about it. His answer would always be, "It killed your uncle." And that's as far as he would go. He would have taught Dean Jr. enough to how to recognize signs, and he would have had Garth's phone number so that he could call Garth or whatever the other hunters were around for help if he needed it. But I don't think he would have taught him how to hunt, or even enough of the lore to really spark that curiosity that might have led him to hunting.
Okay. Lola?
I agree. But I also think that after Sam died, I know it's still fresh. I know, I feel the pain too. After Sam died, I think that Dean Jr. sought it out. Because when you think about it, there's still stuff out there. There's still monsters out there. And Dean Jr. will feel the same responsibility that every other Winchester and Campbell has felt. So I think that he will think after Sam dies, after his dad dies, that you know, people still need to carry this on. There's still monsters out there. Why is my life any more special than, you know, another Bobby or another Rufus? So I think he will seek it out and he will start to carry the legacy on his own.
I'm coming at it from kind of an odd perspective, but one of the things I realized raising our 3 kids is that you have to be the parent to the child you have, not the child you were.
Good.
All the time you're growing up, you're thinking, well, when I'm a parent, I'm going to do it differently. When I'm a grown up, I'm going to do it differently. And then you have kids and they're not you. Maybe there was something you desperately wanted to do or desperately hated, but they're not you. And I found that out with our kids when it was like, do you want to take karate lessons? I wasn't allowed to take karate lessons. You can have karate lessons. You know, some of them did, some of them didn't mean a thing to them. And that happens so often. And I can see where, you know, you see these parents that they never made the football team, so their kid had to be a football player. They never got the cheerleading squad, so their kid had to be homecoming queen. I wasn't what the kid wanted at all. And I can see Sam starting off going, I'm not bringing him up like John did. He's not going to be in it. And then either something happens or Dean Jr., he finds Dean Jr. sneaking off to read the lore books. And he realizes that this is the child he has, not the child he was. And despite his best intentions, this kid takes after his namesake. And I think at that point, if Dean Jr. was the one bringing the interest, Sam would have to teach him so he'd be safe and so he'd be protected, even if it was reluctant on Sam's part. What do you mean you can have a normal life? I don't want a normal life. This is much more interesting. I can save people. And I can, you know, I can picture Sam head desk, you know.
Yeah.
I finally get here and what do I get?
Many people have normal lives. It's not that great. I have a normal life.
So many parents try to force their kid one way or another because of something they liked or disliked or wanted and didn't get. And it's not what the kid wants. And so I can kind of see it working out that way to Sam's, like, great, wonderful. Here I am again. I just can't.
Chastisement.
Yeah. Another thing that came up was we know that, or we get glimpses that maybe Bobby and Jody were kind of more than friends. Jody and Asa. She seemed really close to him. Yes, he was younger. Little cougar's never wrong. But, what do you think?
Well, I rewatched the Asa Fox episode today just in prep for this, and they actually said, I wrote it down, that Bucky was talking about evidently a hunt that it was Bucky and Asa and Jody, and I think they were after some ghouls, and then they went roller skating, the 3 of them. Asa made them go roller skating and then he said, and Bucky said, then you and Asa sneaked off for some sweet time alone. And then even his mother said that Asa was popular with the ladies. And there's several scenes where you see Asa in his Jeep, which his Jeep was the equivalent of the Impala, kissing like a series of different women. And then Jody tells Sam and Dean, because they're like, sweet time alone. And she just looks up at Dean and goes, dating is hard. So, you know, we know what happened when she tried to date Crowley. But all that gets sort of lost when Mary shows up and then the demon shows up and all that. So they never really elaborate on it, but it was clear to me that they had a thing. And that and her reaction when she found out he was dead.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's there's no doubt in my mind. Now with Bobby, I have an opinion on that, but we should talk about Asa and Jody first.
Oh, might as well throw them both in, you know, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think that that they were really fond of each other after she got past her being the sheriff and him being the town drunk, when she discovered who he really was and how great, you know, she found out that he knew so much about what she was discovering. And I think that he taught her a lot, because they were in the same town, and Sam and Dean were just sort of passing through here and there. And I think she learned a lot about hunting from Bobby. And I think they also became good friends because they had their spouse was killed by a demon or whatever that was that killed her son and husband. I always think zombies, but I know it wasn't really zombies. And so I think that they had that in common. And so that drew them together. But I don't know. I didn't see the romantic chemistry that other people kind of saw. I saw it as, you know, she would go and take him food because she knew he was embroiled in something and drinking too much, you know. And I'm trying to think of another one that I was thinking about. Yeah, just that she got beyond his whole, you know, grouchy persona, and she liked him as a friend. I don't think that there was a romance. I didn't see that at all.
Okay, Carol?
I totally think there was a romance. Or there was a romance brewing. I think she had her eyes opened when she found out that he wasn't just like this bumbling town drunk who had the junkyard, and what he really did and what really comprised his personality and how intelligent he was and all of this kind of stuff. And I think they came so close. And the quintessential moment for me is when they're trying to figure out what to do about those leviathans, and she's upstairs in the cabin scrubbing the floor, and he's downstairs tormenting the leviathan, and the soap drops down through the wood, and he rushes upstairs and he's like, "What are you doing? And what was it?" And she's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. It was just like borax." And he grabs her and he kisses her, and her face is just lights up. And they have another moment or two later, but it never comes to that point again. Like it hits, and then it's like, you know, they never get, well, because he gets killed, you know, he gets shot before they get back to that. And the closest then that they get is we have AU Bobby when he comes back. But at that point, AU Bobby's really kind of caught up more with Mary, you know, and even there, Jody doesn't, you know, it's already kind of like old news, and she's kind of moved on and stuff. But there's that beautiful moment during Leviathans where you're like, and it just would have been lovely, you know, she understood everything, you know, but it was not to be, and it was sad for me.
Yeah. Melissa?
Poor Jody.
The only thing I will add is, in addition to everything that Carole just said, they also had the shared history of raising the boys. Yes, I know Jody's really not old enough to be their mother, but she does take on that older sister kind of
motherly role. It's a
motherly, like
she even says, "I'm going to break out my mother voice," you know.
She gives them what they needed in terms of being a mother. Bobby gave them a lot of what they were missing from being a father. So I feel like that's another layer to their almost romance.
Well, and everybody has that friend who, I don't care what age you are, even when you're a teenager, there's always that friend who was everybody's mother. You know, some people are just parental. That's just part of their makeup, and it has nothing to do with age. That's just who they are. So yeah, I could see that, because I agree. Jody's not quite the right age. She's not old enough, but she was a mother, and she takes that role on over and over again. Lola?
Well, and I was still thinking about Aza. With Aza, I definitely think it was ships passing in the night. It kind of lets you know what could have happened. if they'd been in a quote normal situation and if they'd had time to grow, then they probably could have developed a very strong bond and a love. But of course, it was ripped from them because Asa died. Although that's not always in game and Supernatural. In this case, it was.
So maybe it was a foxhole. I mean, you know,
Like
we know all
Annie
about
Hawkins.
foxholes.
Like Annie Hawkins.
Yes.
And they fell in and found each other. They fell on top of each other. It's like, hey, baby, what's going on?
Well, you know, well, folks, we are at the end of our time. I'm sure we're not at the end of all the possible headcanon out there, but we are run out of time for this time. So quick chance for everybody to go around, tell people where to find you online. Starting with you, Lola.
Lola Laracy, and Laracy is spelled Laricscy. It's a family name. It's the Irish part of my family. So if you Google that, seriously, you'll either find me or dead old ladies. I'm not trying to be weird. It's just the truth. And they'll all be related to me.
Melissa.
I have to go after that.
Put up
I'm
the
Melissa.
ditto sign.
I really, I'm Melissa. Frequently, I can be found on the Facebook group that Gail manages or stalking fan fiction on AO3.
Okay. Carole.
I follow that. No. Oh, Carole Stokes. I am also often in the Team Free Will NC group that Gail manages, or on Continual. I'm also on Twitter under true_firesign10, and all my stories are at AO3 under firesign10.
Great. Anne?
I'm on Twitter as Ann Wicker, no spaces, and I'm also on Instagram as Ann.Wicker2, and I'm always on Facebook just under my name, and you can frequently find me commenting and making smart remarks on Gail's Supernatural Facebook group.
And I'm Gail. You can find me at gailzmartin.com and morganbryce.com. All the rest of my social media is some variation of those names, except for the Supernatural TFWNC group and here at Continual. So thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. And thanks all of you for watching and listening. There'll be more Supernatural coming up here on Continual. So we'll see you online.